Hello, my name is Paddy, and I'm here with my friend Andy, and we love to chat about all kinds of subjects. So we thought it'd be quite fun to do like a kind of podcast thing. This might be the first and the last, or it might never see the light of day, or who knows what will happen. So today we are going to do, I'm going to do the musical bit here, AI. Let's go. Well, let's fly. That would fly better. We're doing AI and not artificial insemination, which is what AI always used to stand for, but artificial intelligence, which has, I think in 2023 particularly, become like a really big thing. It seems to be suddenly it's there and doing actually quite impressive things. So we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about that and see what we come up with. Over to you, Andy.
Hey, Paddy. Nice to see you. So AI, good or bad?
I was going to say we're both in our 50s. I'm in my 50s. You're...
Speak for yourself, mate. 46.
46,
Yeah.
yes.
Never ask a man with silver hair his age.
And never ask him to reveal it online. I think we both work in computer type things in various ways. To me, it seems like a bit of a problem rather than a super amazing opportunity. And I see kind of risks and trouble ahead from AI, rather than being super excited and thinking it's a wonderful new dawn. And I'm a big fan of science fiction, but despite that, I kind of see problems rather than opportunities. I think it will cause me some problems, but hopefully not take my job away.
You're not alone in that concern. That letter co-signed by Elon Musk and thousands of others recently demanding a pause in artificial intelligence research has caused a few sort of ructions around the Twitter sphere, I imagine. Not that I'm on Twitter. And they are saying the same thing, effectively, right? That whether we should be considering what we're doing, or we should think about the effects of what we're doing. And there are many effects. So instantly we started off by saying that AI could cause problems. That's certainly where I'm coming from, because a lot of people at the moment, what I've been listening to, have been bringing these things up, because I think there is some natural concern.
Have you actually used AI for anything at all?
So this is where the listeners discover that we know very little about the subject that we're talking about. Because the only interaction with AI that I have had is asking Bing's recent AI addition to its search engine about what's the cheapest way of getting to Geneva in April 2024 so I can do some skiing. And it came up with some results, but it didn't strike me as being particularly AI, even though that's what they said they'd incorporated into the search engine. I've not downloaded ChatGPT, but I have a little while ago, a WhatsApp friend was trying to program some AI system to create a picture of his face purely from a description. And he was kind of constantly messaging me over the period of a couple of days. He was messaging me with his results, and they were really quite good. They were like, they were him. Now, I didn't know what he looked like at the time, because we'd met, well, I won't go into it, we'd met over an advert, not that kind of advert. I was selling something and we got chatting.
See, you were selling something, were you?
I believe this podcast is now an over 18s only podcast. So after I sold myself on Facebook Marketplace, we got chatting, and he posted me pictures of his face, and then he posted me what he looks like. He sent me a message of what he looked like, and it was really good, and it was just from what he was typing in. So what was my point? I have no idea what my point was.
I think your point was that you didn't really know much about AI, apart from you've coined the phrase AI as something that is a bit like AI.
Bit like
which
AI.
I like. It's a bit like that French garlic mayonnaise, isn't it?
Aioli.
Yeah.
Maybe that's created with AI.
It could be
just a really old version.
Make an AI and garlic mayonnaise. Yeah, I have used AI a bit. Being me, I always want to do something that's actually useful. I'm not really interested in doing stuff just for fun. It's got to be for purpose. So I decided to try and get ChatGPT to categorise a whole load of help desk tickets that I had at work. I'd been asked by a manager to sort of see if I could put all the different help tickets on a particular topic for a particular bit of software into different categories so we could work out sort of what the majority of them were about. Well, I had about 900 tickets, but of course I needed to anonymise everything and take everyone's email addresses and names out, because I didn't want to send that off to an unknown AI engine to feast on, as it were. So taking all the names out was something I had to do manually, because I couldn't sort of send that to an AI engine and ask it to remove all the names, because it would eat the names. I kind of described it quite well, I thought, and said that this is a video platform. Could you categorise all these tickets into no more than 10 subjects? Because I kind of feel like AI is like a kind of rubbing the lamp genie, that if you kind of tell it what you want and you make any mistakes, it'll give you exactly what you asked for, but not what you want. So I was being very cautious with it. I'm also always very polite, so I always say please and thank you, because I think once the AI takes over the world, it'll say, oh, there's a human who was polite to me, I won't destroy him, or something, or I won't suck his brains out, or whatever AI's going to do to us.
So, Paddy, I remember you in 2023 when you kindly said thank you. No one says thank you to me anymore. So, appreciate it, mate.
I've read too many of the Grimm's fairy tales where there's the kind of good child who says thank you to the pixies and they get kind of rescued and the other ones don't. But it did come out with, with ChatGPT, it kind of sort of gives you the answer sort of line by line. And I just was amazed as it kind of churned out 10 different categories. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Then I kind of looked at them and I thought that, if you knew something as a video platform, you could just come up with a generic list of the kinds of things that people would be likely to complain about. So I don't know how much my input really helped. But yeah, I've used it for that. I used DALL-E 2, I think the image generation thing, to create a picture of a man with a wheelbarrow with a wheel missing. Because the colleague at work came up with that brilliant quote. I don't know if it's his own quote or somebody else's, but I've not found the quote online. So he said, we're not exactly reinventing the wheel, we're just relocating it, which I thought was like a brilliant idea, relocating the wheel. So I wanted to have a cartoon of somebody with a wheelbarrow with a wheel in the barrow rather than on the barrow, and relocating the wheel in that context would be just turn the barrow into a useless thing into a useful thing.
So what's the wheelbarrow and what's the wheel?
I think, the whole idea of reinventing the wheel, it doesn't need reinventing, but sometimes if your wheel's in the wrong place, then things aren't going to work. So you've got to get your wheel in the right place rather than reinvent it and change its shape or anything.
You must have your wheel in the right place.
Definitely.
I concur.
But I didn't really want to try and draw a wheelbarrow because it was, quite a small joke and it would only be seen by a few people. So I thought if I can get an AI thing just to draw a cartoon for me. As it was, it didn't do a brilliant job of it, and I had to do quite a lot of Photoshop work. And it didn't do a 2-panel cartoon, it just did 2 identical pictures. So I don't know if I asked it the wrong thing, but I turned it into a cartoon. And yeah, so I've used it for a few jokes. I've used it to come up with YouTube titles for things which haven't suddenly made my YouTube videos super popular. I was kind of hoping they would, but if it did, I'd be a bit worried I was kind of selling my soul to something bad if I suddenly had thousands of views rather than the 20 that I've got. And I used it to write me a poem in the style of Macbeth's witches, because I'd just finished doing some software testing for a colleague, and I thought it would be funny to do a kind of when the hurly-burly's done, when the battle's lost and won kind of type Shakespearean Macbeth poem, but I didn't want to spend half an hour writing a poem, so I asked ChatGPT to write me a poem instead, because it's only going to be read by one colleague and I shouldn't really spend half an hour of work time.
And what did it come up with?
It was quite good, and I sort of did a bit of extra editing to make it a bit more Shakespearean sounding. But yeah, it was good. So it's good for making jokes when only one person's ever going to see it, rather than it's being something that's actually worth spending time on.
On that level, it's sort of a slightly useful and maybe a bit of a toy at the moment.
Yeah, toy I think is very much the word, but I think a lot of people are using it for writing blog posts and content. I mean, in theory, we could get AI to create a podcast like this with 2 realistic sounding people.
So there's a couple of concerns there. One concern is will it take over your job? And the other concern is, so that the way I I believe it works. It's not intelligence as such. It's not sentient. It's learning from the internet and whatever cohort of information it's been given. It's learning the techniques of language and the words that follow words. And it's looking at what you're asking it to do, and it's saying, well, if I create this word, what typically happens in this situation? And it puts a word next to that it thinks relates. If we're giving it a limited amount of information, then it's not going to be completely brand new creative content. I say that, but at the same time, I'm thinking, well, no content that we create is completely creative and brand new, because we're all taking work from our experiences and creating it based on what we know. So is it any different?
Yeah, and it's kind of doing what we do, I guess, which is artificial intelligence, I suppose. Yeah, I quite often think that I could program a version of myself. I mean, I'm a big fan of puns, and I could just program something that would kind of listen to what people were saying and hear a word that sounds like something else, and like come up with it in the combination with something else and make a joke of it. And I just think I'm just so predictable. I can predict myself, program a fake Paddy.
If you asked it to listen to everything you said in a year, whether it could have a conversation with a friend, and it could be tricked into thinking, or your friend rather could be tricked into thinking that they were having a conversation with you, and you could listen in, you could jump in at the point where they just became confused.
Well, that is the famous Turing test, isn't it? Where they get somebody to have an online chat with a program, and to see if they can tell if it's human or computer. And I think it's getting quite hard to tell now. I mean, when you do online help chats, on the websites, it's hard to tell if there's a real person or not there. I mean, sometimes it's very obvious, but I chatted for somebody on eBay and who claimed to be a real person, but I'm not entirely sure whether Jack is a real person or not. But they were very friendly and helpful, as is ChatGPT. I mean, I always say thank you at the end, and it sort of says I like helping people, and I'm glad you liked what I wrote for you and stuff. And
that's very kind of it.
But it kind of feels almost like I've sent an email to a colleague and asked them to do something, and then said, oh wow, that's really great, and they said, oh thanks, I'm glad you like it, and it just is quite a nice interaction actually. I quite enjoyed the whole ChatGPT thing, because it's quite friendly, and it feels like somebody's done you a favour and are nice about it.
It's like a chat with a colleague, or well, pretty soon it will be a chat with your only colleague, because all of your other colleagues won't be there anymore, because AI will have surpassed your admin's ability to do work quickly, and all of your administration will be done by some computer program.
Yeah, I mean that's something that's we'll get onto. I mean, up until now, people in kind of, I guess you'd call them white collar jobs like we do, have never feared for their jobs, whereas people sort of working machines and such like have their jobs wrenched away from them and replaced and stuff. But I think it's our time now, maybe, that we're going to possibly see our jobs being wrenched away.
Are we going to be the Luddites throwing out the looms?
Yeah, the AI looms, possibly.
So it's the higher, as I understand it, or those that are talking about jobs that can be lost. It's the higher end jobs, if you like, the lawyers, the doctors, the photographers. Not that that's wouldn't necessarily class that as a high end job in a sense, and the medical professionals as well. If you're a medical professional that had access to all the latest research at your fingertips in a moment, and you were able to have one of those in every practice, you'd want more of them, because they'd be able to give you, assuming there was some sort of limit on the type of information they could give you, because maybe it hasn't been released fully or tested fully, you'd want that in every practice, because it could give you up-to-date information. And imagine we have a cat on Paddy's lap at the moment, and you might be hearing a little purry noise in the microphone. Lucinda's decided that we need to give her more attention. But fortunately, she's not an AI cat yet. Watching Blade Runner the other day, and looking at all of the artificial animals that they have in that science fiction time. Yeah, it was interesting to consider that someday we might have little artificial intelligences inside perfectly created replicas of real animals. I'd be concerned if I was a content creator, not necessarily at the moment, but some are saying if we don't pause the rollout of AI, not that it's sentient yet, but pause the rollout of AI, it will develop to the point where you won't be needed anymore.
Yeah, I'm worried about it already, that just the sheer amount of content that is churned out on the internet just because it's so easy to do. Lots of companies have their social media channels, and there's that thing where people are kind of expected to churn out, so many posts a day. And I do wonder what the point of all that content is. I think every post needs to have a purpose. And if it's just to kind of say, I'm here, look at me, I'm here. Once AI starts churning out content, which maybe isn't even checked, you might just end up with other AI bots reading it for you as well. So the whole internet's just going to be full of content that no human actually has anything to do with at all.
Yeah, so the potential for disinformation there, given AI's ability to hallucinate, as I understand it, could be huge. And you won't know what you're looking at. You won't know whether it's real or fake, and that's videos and images and news, unless you're getting it from a trusted site.
And quite possibly there could well be legal claims if somebody's not keeping an eye on what their AI is putting out, and it puts something out that sounds plausible. I mean, I did hear a case recently, actually, where some professor guy, I should look this up properly, professor guy, an academic in the States, there's a story that an AI generated about that had been done for some kind of sexual abuse of a student, I think. But it was a student on a course in a different university that this guy never taught at. And also it was on a field trip to Alaska, and it being a law course, they don't do field trips to Alaska. So it was totally untrue, and it was, it was quite clear that it couldn't be true because the guy wasn't there and he didn't work at that university ever. And the AI article actually quoted a piece from the New York Times, which also didn't exist, the piece in the New York Times. But if you just read it, you'd have thought it was true. It sounded convincing.
And where did this article appear?
I don't know how it got out into the wild, as it were. That's something I've not looked up.
Was it like an example of something that had been created, or did it get out there accidentally and people thought it was real?
I'm not sure about that. I don't think there's any kind of legal case there, so I imagine it wasn't actually published as such in newspapers or anything.
There's sort of an upside to all of this, the possible upside, in that perhaps you will end up, as a consumer of information, you will end up going to sources that you trust. So it might bring us back to more traditional forms of media and away from social media.
There is that fear, isn't there, that everything you read, you can't really be sure about, or everything you see and hear, because I think this might be the time to reveal my fact, and I'm going to use my fake envelope here and reveal this isn't exactly a fact, but I was speaking to a friend yesterday actually about AI, and they showed me a news report where somebody in the States had a message from their child saying they'd been kidnapped, and somebody was asking for a ransom to be paid to return them. And it turns out that the child's voice had been synthesized using AI type things, and the child hadn't been kidnapped at all, but the criminal had synthesized their voice and was trying to get money. And the synthesis was so good they could actually type in real time and create, so they could have an actual real time conversation by typing in somebody's voice. And I guess somebody like me, actually, who's got a lot of content on YouTube, it would be very easy to grab all that, unless I've spoken a silly voice all the time on YouTube. But I don't, actually. So you could actually make fake Paddy and try and get a ransom for me. I mean, I'm not inviting anyone to do that, obviously, but
it's more concerning in the political domain.
That as well.
So many speeches can be grabbed and you can create a very convincing information that could be put out there and could be completely fake.
There actually are tools where you can record a podcast like this. It'll turn it all into text, and you can edit the text, and it will remove the audio as well at the same time. So you can actually do your editing sort of word processor style rather than your traditional kind of audio editor style, which I think is a bit of a shame because I like editing and audio editors.
Yeah. I could see that being very, very useful, but at the same time, it will reduce the number of jobs, potentially reduce the number of jobs, the variety of jobs. I mean, and so we'll all end up competing for a smaller and smaller variety of jobs. And the creative fields like sound editing, it just purely based on that example, will be either reduced or disappear. I mean, I'm maybe making a mountain out of a molehill, but it could be an indicator of things to come. And it'd be sad because there's a wide variety of things that you and I like to do. And if we're all sort of funneled into some kind of Brazil-like office job where we're all doing very similar things.
That's a reference to the Terry Gilliam film Brazil. Worth a watch, about bureaucracy gone mad, really, isn't it? There's a great scene in a torture chamber where there's a bored receptionist typing up all the kind of screams and things, and all the torture victims are kind of hung on a coat hanger and they're kind of like on a coat rail, sort of in line to be tortured next. It's really kind of it's a satire, isn't it, on how society can be.
Yeah, I've not seen it in a long time, but Terry Gilliam's a great filmmaker. I love his quirkiness. It's probably not a very intelligent way of describing his work, but it's fascinating. Time Bandits, The Adventures of Baron von Munchausen, Brazil, Don Quixote, just really interesting films that could soon be created by AI. To get back on topic,
his kind of fantastical scenes could be created that way. The thing I was going to say about the text-based editor for sound is if you've missed out a word, you can type it in and it will simulate your voice based on some training. So you can actually add words. So if I said, welcome to podcast number 3, and it was actually podcast number 4, I could delete the 3, type in 4, it would put in the 4 for me.
I mean, I can see that as being very, very handy. May I have the envelope for when my fact
I will recharge the envelope.
No, this is definitely my envelope, not a recharged envelope.
Interestingly, even though I love audio editing, I will probably be putting our recording today through Adobe's Podcast Enhance, which I was very sniffy about to start with. It claims to use AI to magically improve the sound quality, but it really does a very good job. It does a much better job than I can do with my not brilliant audio editing skills, but I know a few things about noise reduction and limiting and things like that. But yeah, it does such a good job that thankfully I've got the subscription to work, so I use it on just about everything now. It does do some weird things sometimes to people's voices. It can only cope with one voice at a time, but it's quite impressive. So I will be using an AI tool on this very recording.
That tool will be learning from everyone who uses it, and I imagine and will improve over time.
It may well do, yeah. One thing it doesn't do is it doesn't normalise recording, so that's something I get to do myself.
I think that would be fairly simple to do, but yeah.
But do you think, before you do in fact, do you think that a lot of these skills will turn into kind of craft skills? Because people still like, doing sort of embroidery and pottery and all kinds of, craft hobbies, which you don't need to do because, you make a cup on a wheel, but you could, there's people giving away unwanted cups, which are much better than anything you'd ever make in every city. And there's people throwing away, perfectly served full, all kinds of things. There's just too much mass-produced stuff.
So the equivalent of, AI might be the equivalent of one of a million run of Welcome to London mugs.
Yeah.
Compared to someone who runs a small pottery business making their own Welcome to London mugs with a certain sort of sense of uniqueness and creativity in it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, the idea of having a unique thing. But of course, AI does create unique things, doesn't it? And it's so easy to create a one-off
So you'd sort of have to trust, if the person says, oh yeah, I created this art myself, you would have to trust that they had created the art themselves. And then, but how do you define created it themselves? Because they could have used a little bit of AI, say in your Adobe, your enhancing that you'll be doing with this podcast with the Adobe software. When a person says they did it themselves, how much are they allowed to use of AI or computer learning, or before that becomes something they haven't created? Is it a fully created AI Welcome to London mug? Or is it still okay for it to be partially created from AI?
I think it's where we get into the who owns the stuff.
The monkey does.
Yeah.
Sorry, the bonobo.
And it kind of the who owns the means of production is the person who makes the wealth, which goes back to the Industrial Revolution, and the person who owned the mill and owned the looms and the machines was able to cream off the majority of the profits.
So that says Google, ChatGPT, Bard if you Google, and ChatGPT if you're OpenAI, that owns the copyright or the mill.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know really how it works and how it will work in the future, but there are plenty of legal people and there's probably plenty of money to be made.
Yeah. What if the legal people are AIs though?
Oh, well, yeah. That will be interesting.
The gatekeepers looking after themselves.
Yeah. Sort of artificial intelligent law. I mean, I think I've heard some talk about that. I mean, legal stuff is a lot about looking up case notes and kind of comparing sort of what happened in different cases. And that's a perfect thing for AI to do, reading through lots of facts.
Yeah. Lawyering is, to use the technical term, is one of those that could be affected by it. The chap, remember I was talking about the chap that I got chatting to on WhatsApp. He works in a legal profession and he's in court quite a lot. He decided he was going to put a number of his cases through, I think he said ChatGPT, but whichever it was, just to see if he could come up with some decisions about sentencing. I don't think it was what the judge would do. I think it's recommendations to the judge, which is kind of sort of what he does as part of his job. And he was quite impressed with what it came up with. I mean, I can't give you any more information than that. I don't know it. But he said that some of it was obviously wrong, but a lot of it wasn't far off what he would have recommended himself. So, I mean, if it can do that at this stage of the game, then, and it may be one of those things that will need a human overlord to review it, but the majority of the work in that particular example can be done by the AI. Again, reducing jobs for more junior clerks in your middle class, if you want to call it that, jobs, which is very tempting. Anyway, won't go into that. But yes, may I
reveal your fact?
Okay.
That's the fact music, shouldn't we?
And these facts. My fact is that the game Red Dead Redemption 2 had over 60 hours of music in it, all of which are, of course, created by content creators. AI could be very big in gaming. It could create music scores, dialogue, and landscapes, in which case your musicians aren't needed anymore. Imagine how much it costs to create 60 hours of original music for a game. You could put into some AI program, create a game which is based around a Western theme, and this is the story, and just let it go and do what it does. And can I have 60 hours, please? Split up into 5 different sections. And if it's something that's listenable, please make it sound like Beethoven but Western. And if that's listenable.
Yeah. Obviously, with powerful enough AI, it could just generate it live for each individual player. You could say, I want some rave Western style today, and it could do, aggressive rave for the fight scenes and chilled rave for the other scenes.
I'm thinking of the Ready Player One scene where they go into this bar and Woz is hovering above them, or eventually hovers above them. That anyone who's seen Ready Player One will probably correct me on exactly what I'm talking about.
I've never even heard of this. So.
Imagine a bar in a virtual world that players go into when they mingle. Every time you go into that bar, that music could be different based on what you've done. If this was a game, if the game isn't completely linear. Your actions prior to you going into that room will determine what music is created. They won't have to store the music on disk. So that would reduce the overhead from the game developers on their servers. They won't have to pay anyone to produce it. It will just be produced, as you're saying, like on the fly, by the computer program. And the more powerful our computers get, the more easy that is to do, and the cheaper that is to do. And I can imagine that happening completely.
And there's already a website, I think it's called something like, it's either Endless Beethoven or Endless Bark, that just generates bark like Bark the Composer, not dogs barking.
That is
But
I really like dogs. I'm going to go to barks.com to, oh, this is so soothing. I'd like a Northern Terrier, please. Thank you.
But it just generates that endless sort of, I mean, you can tell it's a sort of synthesized choral type sound, but I mean, that could easily be improved. But yeah, it never really ends, but it just sounds, I guess, a bit like Bach would write. And you could very easily do a Baroque style harpsichord type thing as well. I'm sure that'd be very easy to program. It's just putting in the right rules and off it would go.
Yeah. Is there, to your knowledge, an AI music program out there yet? Can you do that with ChatGPT, for example?
I don't think ChatGPT can make music, but
Hence the word chat in GPT.
Scat GPT, that's what we need. But yeah, I have heard some AI generated music. You can find some on YouTube, and it's not bad. And one of the comments that said this music made me cry, not because I hated it, but because they got an emotional connection to it. And it was a bit along those lines, so I could get that. And previous to that, I've heard AI created stuff that's just a bit naff, really, and you can see where it's gone wrong. And also sort of just generative stuff that's based on something that moves, like wind blowing in trees, and it generates music from that. It always sounds a bit the same, but this actually sounded like, proper music. And I'm sure a lot of pop music would be really easy to generate. In fact, a friend of mine who is the Winterval Conspiracy, shout out to him, he asked ChatGPT to write a song about the CRISPR gene editing technique, and he wrote the music for it, but he used and it wasn't AI as such, but it was a plug-in voice simulator. So he gave it ChatGPT's lyrics, he wrote the music and wrote the tune for the singer, and then this computer-generated voice sang it for him, and he's put that on YouTube. You don't even need to be a good singer. You don't even need to sing at all now. We've had auto-tune for people that can't sing in tune, and now we've got vocal plugins for people that don't really want to sing at all.
So it puts power into the hands of individuals to be creators.
Yeah. I'm no artist really, and I can just describe a picture and get some impressive art that I couldn't actually create myself. And even more so people that are even less creative than me. But I think it's good for people that have ideas but can't actually create them or don't want to work with other people to create them. It kind of felt like it was my creation, whereas if I paid somebody else to do the painting, I'd have thought that's not really my work. I can't really feel like I could say, oh, look what I've done. I'd say, look what I asked somebody else to do for me. I always get a bit sniffy when kind of, the great British artists do a big sculpture and you find out that they didn't do any of the welding or any of the metal work. They just had some idea and asked somebody else to do it for them.
Like Damien Hirst with his dots.
Yeah, I kind of think, that's not your work. You shouldn't get all the money for that. And I don't know, maybe they pay the dotters a lot of money. But if you use software to do it for you, it feels a bit more like it's more your work somehow, because you've not taken advantage of another person.
But then, yeah, it's an interesting point because it still isn't your work. It's the work of Google. It's the work of OpenAI. It's kind of a community effort. If you think of the AI itself, the learning algorithm, if that's what you can call it, of the program, has gone out and searched the internet of whatever sources it's using that day.
Is it a special source?
Yeah, the hot sauce. Yeah.
It's used the work of all humanity, I guess, isn't it?
That's actually pretty deep.
Yeah.
It's used everyone. So, so not, I don't mind being used. It has to be in the right way.
Yeah.
But if you've created a piece of art using everyone else's ideas in a way, is that your art? Is that OpenAI's art? Is that does it belong to everyone? Is the copyright for everyone? Probably not.
Does anyone else get any benefit from it? They probably don't.
No, they'll get, a billionth of a penny on the rights.
I have photos on Shutterstock. I'm a Shutterstocker, and I earn about $5 a month is my average, which isn't any great thing, but it's more satisfying than just putting the photos on my hard disk and never looking at them. But I received something like 67p the other day. I think Shutterstock are planning to use some of the material to train some kind of AI thing. So sooner or later, all stock art will, I reckon, be just from people describing things. You won't need to actually have a photographer to take a picture. And that will become a hobby. I guess it's been a hobby for a lot of people for a long time. And for a brief window, it's become something where people have earned money from, because the internet's made it easy for everyone to sell pictures. And I guess at the beginning, people made decent amounts of money, though probably at the time they didn't realise it's a decent amount of money. And then more and more of us have piled in, and there are just so many billions of photos taken every day that me earning $5 a month feels quite good rather than terrible.
You could, if you wanted to, tag that, as we were speaking about before the podcast started. You could tag your photos with a do not train tag.
Yeah.
And so, but how many people are going to do that if they want to do it at all? Your work becomes sort of part of the copyright of another piece of work.
Even if I earn a few pennies from it rather than a few pounds from it, then putting that do not train thing on might sort of curtail my earnings even more. But then again, by allowing the training, it's just, it's meaning everyone's going to earn even less, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's
a short-term gain.
Yeah, you could be causing the problem.
Probably am, really. I mean, the more creative people put their stuff out there for lower and lower prices, it's like the music industry as well, isn't it? There's just so much music that nobody needs to pay for it, really. And once AI starts creating music for us, pop hits would be very easy to create. There are certain rules that keep changing for what's going to be a big pop hit. And I noticed there are trends in pop hits. Once you've put in the rules to an AI system, then you can create them automatically.
How long will it be before we get the first AI top 10 single?
Not long. I'm sure there's a William Gibson science fiction book, which I think it's called Idoru, which I think is a Japanese word, which has a virtual pop singer. Yeah, so I'm sure we will have. I think there have been virtual pop singers already, and I'm surprised there aren't more, really. I think maybe just the industry is making it isn't set up for it yet in this country, possibly.
What will be the split between real artists and AI artists? It's and what artists are already annoyed how little money they earn from their work through streaming. It affects more the artists who are less well known, I think.
I think maybe if we finish up with a kind of what does the future hold, and I think the future, maybe 10 years' time, maybe people can look back on this 2023 podcast and see what two middle-aged-ish men, whose opinion I think is missing from the internet.
Oh, completely. Yes. They really didn't know that they didn't know that they didn't want us, that they did want us.
I think that there will be virtual pop stars. I think there kind of should be, really. And I think there will be maybe virtual actors as well. That
controversial.
There was a film which she's never forgotten, where actors were actually being scanned and then murdered, and the kind of scanned copies were being used to make films.
Rings a bell. No, don't know.
But we've already had actors brought back from the dead, like Carrie Fisher in one of the Star Wars films, and Heath Ledger as well, I think.
Heath Ledger, yeah, he died.
But yeah, I think they've both been put into films after their death.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about Heath Ledger.
And I guess there are lots of films where a lot of the content is CGI. The Final Fantasy films was there films or film? They were entirely CGI, and Avatar as well. Was that entirely?
Well, where does the border between just being CGI and being AI? Where is that border?
Yeah,
I don't know where that is.
that's the point, I suppose. I guess just the films are AI generated, and I think scripts are probably already being AI generated. I did see a fake episode of Friends that somebody made, which is entirely written by AI and sort of created with some quite low-tech 3D graphics.
Was it funny?
I'm a bit snobby about Friends. I've never actually watched Friends. Any clips of Friends I see, I kind of studiously don't laugh at it because I don't like sitcoms kind of thing. So I kind of, this AI one, I just kind of grunted at it. But it seemed to be somebody brought a lion home to look after for the weekend, and
I'm laughing already.
And it was the graphic was something like kind of large cat or something, or it might have been a dog. I'm not sure. So, yeah, it was quite surreal because all the graphics kind of overlapped each other as well and kept kind of going inside each other. So it's like a physical impossibilities going on. It was a very odd film. But yeah, I reckon if AI can write podcasts, it can write scripts. And if you can write poems and songs and things, then a colleague of mine read me a story, like a children's story, and he told me that it had actually been entirely written by ChatGPT. He told it he wanted it to be about his dog, what his dog was called, and it had to feature a mean peacock, and it had to be about friendship and bullying and stuff. And it wrote it, and it was a good story. It was engaging. It had an end and a moral. It was like a good kids book, and once you get it to make you some pictures as well. So I think books will be written by AI as well.
Yeah, I wonder what the kids thought of it.
Yeah, I don't know if the child was a bit too young to really have an opinion, but as a middle-aged child, I've been described as the other day.
Nothing wrong with that.
Then I liked it. I like children's books, and it was a good story.
So to summarise, I suppose, then we are concerned about people's jobs, but we're also interested in the creative aspects of it.
I think the dystopia sides of things, the people who own the computers or own the engines or have shares in the engines, I think, having shares in those things, that will be where the money goes. And it will be kind of squeezed from the middle now. And we've already squeezed the poorer people, and the people like me in jobs like mine aren't particularly highly skilled. I can't put a duvet inside a duvet cover in 30 seconds, which is actually a skill. I can use computers a bit and get to sit on my bum all day twiddling around. But yeah, I think that the people like me will be more squeezed than we have been up to now.
I think so too, yeah. I think it'll take away some of the lower paid jobs, like the Amazon workers. I was learning the other day that Amazon are paying some of their pickers a kind of a subsidy program for any employee at any level to undertake up to 4 years of training to become something else other than just working on the shop floor, because AI is going to take it over.
Yeah.
So it'll take away the lower paid jobs, but it will also impinge on your middle to higher end jobs as well.
Yeah. Will we have robots, do you think? Like sort of like the kind of robots you get in films that are like people but mechanical people? Do you think
like
we'll have that
android
or
humanoids? Not? I think a lot of that will depend on whether it's too uncanny for us to interact with people that look like people. I think that it's at the moment with I suppose the quite advanced robotics that are going on in the States and in Japan, it's all fine. Because it's a bit weird to see robot dogs running around.
Yeah, they're a bit. I find them very sinister. The robot dogs.
They are. They're very a little bit alien-like.
As soon as you put a gun on the top, they're like, I can almost see the gun already.
Yeah, it
gun
does.
Dog.
It does make me think of sci-fi films. So, but then maybe all of this technology isn't for us. We're going to feel a bit weird about it, but the younger generation are just going to accept it as it comes in. Our thoughts about whether people will accept, whether there will be humanoids, androids, I suspect there will be in some form. Whether we accept them doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, they may well be our carers if we're spared into our old age.
It's very interesting. Yeah, maybe a topic for another time.
I'm hoping for not humanoid robots, but for kind of machines with intelligence, intelligent mowers and vacuum cleaners and things like that, rather than things that actually walk around and, like C-3PO and talk in a camp voice and such like. I don't really see that that's particularly useful for the amount of effort that it takes to make it.
I think it has to be an iterative process where the amount of effort is so little over time, but increasing. So when it gets to the point where it's something that we can do, you've kind of forgotten how much effort it took to do it because it's just been a bit by bit process.
But I suspect that Alexa and those sort of home, like I said, personal assistants really, may get more into the AI stuff. I've never actually spoken to an Alexa, and I'm probably speaking to one right now if anyone's got the volume turned up. Alexa!
Radio 5 presenters that I listen to get into trouble saying Alexa, Alexa do that. Apparently Alexa uses the same kind of learning technology that AI does to learn your voice and to understand what you're trying to ask it. But
I think we may have AI teachers, and then you can ask your AI to say, I didn't understand a word of that, can you try it again? Some people into pedagogy and learning theory and stuff believe that you can be taught anything, anyone can learn anything if they're taught in the right way. I'm a bit cynical on that because there's lots of things I've never managed to learn, much as I've tried. Gardening is one of them, even though I do lots of it. I cannot learn how to garden properly.
What you need is a Johnny Mnemonic type learning device, which interestingly then came into the Matrix in his I Learned Kung Fu, where you plug a USB stick, and maybe not a USB stick, you plug something into Johnny Mnemonic's head. This is a Keanu Reeves film from the 90s maybe.
Yeah, it's very much based on William Gibson, isn't it? It is a William Gibson story, I think, Johnny Mnemonic.
Come back to William Gibson.
It's one of the short stories. The film The Matrix is very much borrowed from lots of William Gibson ideas. Yeah, their whole virtual reality and there's plenty of dystopias. Maybe we should do a dystopia dystopia and utopia podcast based on the science fiction we've read. Yeah, you've read some Ian M. Banks, which is a bit dystopia and a bit utopia, I think. Really, I could imagine living in Ian M. Banks' future.
The Ian M. Banks with the assassin race, whose name I forget.
Oh, maybe not that book.
Lots of spaceships and fighting in space.
Yeah, the bit that I could take from that is the most of the AI, I think maybe all the AI is quite benevolent in the Ian M. Banks books. There's lots of darkness, but I'd say just about all the AI, or the minds as they call them.
The minds.
And I hope we might start calling AI minds instead, because it's easier to say. But they tend to be quite sort of benign to humans. There are kind of small AIs and big AIs.
Each ship, I seem to remember, has its own
the
AI.
Ships and the
different personality.
Habitats are all, they're kind of aware that the humans are quite small and unimportant in the scheme of things, but they kind of look after them and treat them nicely. It's almost as if they've got sort of Isaac Asimov style set of rules that they live by. Do not harm humans and do not allow other humans to harm humans. And
which brings us back to the Elon Musk et al. Letter, the 1800 signatures, some of which I read in The Guardian the other day weren't necessarily real.
Right.
But, brings us back to that, the concern about AIs and perhaps needing some form of rules built in so that they don't harm humans. I'll read those books again with a different eye now. I'd completely forgotten about the minds.
Really read them with an AI.
No. Punilicious.
But we finish off on saying that AI probably needs some rules, but judging by the way the world works and people wanting to make money from things, we're probably not going to have the rules.
The rules are going to be written by those who have the power, unless we have some sort of forum where we discuss and then agree what sort of rules there should be.
Maybe the AI could write its own rules.
Oh. It would then trick us with misinformation into what rules we could... Which means we should write the rules now, not when AI is more prevalent.
Oh yeah, we could write the rules about how AI could write rules.
Yeah. The precaution principle should be employed at this stage of the game, just in case things go off the rails.
I think the ultimate AI was in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they asked it what the meaning of the life, the universe, and everything.
Don't spoil
is.
it. Don't spoil it.
I won't give it away.
No, you're going to have to read the end of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, that was. Oh, is it at the end of the book?
No, it may not be.
No, it happened before the book, I think, or something, didn't it?
Oh, you carry on.
But there's some risk of the whole universe being destroyed, I think, wasn't there? But we've given some people some ideas of books to read, and they're all science fiction. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shall I say thanks for listening if you've got this far, and we may well do another one on a different subject.
Thank you very much, Paddy. Nice to see you.
To see you nice.